So let me give you an answer that I've never given before because of the way you asked the question.
Henry, thank you so much for joining for a Bean interview. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. I will be honest, I'm a little bit biased. You're one of my favorite people in the world. I got to do my PhD working with you, and you're just fantastic. I've learned so much from you. But if you could just give us a brief intro, your official title or titles, I know you have a lot of them, name, kind of where you are located.
Well, Chelsea, it's fun to be chit-chatting with you today, and thank you for inviting me to discuss our work on Bean and other pulses. Um, my background. Well, let's see. Before they discovered the quill and parchment paper, I think I was trained at Rutgers University. Oh, in the 70s in nutrition, with a focus in nutritional biochemistry. Went on to the Mayo Clinic and worked in molecular medicine. Then I went on to the Cancer Center in Chicago to learn how to do nutrition and cancer research. Then I went to the Department of Home Economics at the University of New Hampshire, where I was a department head and ran the Human Nutrition Center. Then, because of our work on exercise and cancer, I got to go to Denver, Colorado. And I was in Denver for many years and finally said, the work that we're doing on fruits and vegetables and cancer risk doesn't make sense to me. I need to understand the decision making process that goes into when a producer chooses the seeds they plant in the ground that end up in our grocery stores. So I said, wouldn't it be cool if the Cancer Prevention Laboratory moved into a Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture, which is the department I currently work in at Colorado State University, where I am a professor of horticulture and human health, and have been happily exploring food crops and health for the past 21 years. How's that for an introduction?
Amazing. I thank you because although we spend a lot of time chatting, I couldn't have gotten all of those details because you've done so much. So I appreciate you summarizing that for everyone so we can get an idea of all your expertise and where you're coming from. I have to ask, why did you start working with beans? What drew you to beans?
So, I do a lot of things, as you just mentioned, and I'm active in the community. And many years ago, I learned the importance of people taking time to chat and invite people to help out. I had no particular reason for studying being and human health other than a plant breeder by the name of Mark Prick one day bumped into me on the sidewalk outside both of our respective laboratory buildings. And he said, Henry, I hear you understand stuff about human health. I said, yeah, a little bit. He says, I got this magical food. It's the perfect food. Would you work with me on it? And I said, that sounds interesting. And Mark Brick was a bean breeder. And it was the invitation to work with him to study the health properties of bean that 20, about 20 years ago prompted me to first get interested in the field. And I must tell you, I was skeptical. And I can remember the first time that Dr. Brick brought me uh, a whole bunch of bean samples. I thought, it's a hill of beans, big deal, And then I started to actually understand what he said. He always would say, Henry, I'm just a producer. I don't know anything. And actually, Mark Brick knew a whole bunch. And as I would listen, uh, I learned more and more to the point that through the shared expertise of a plant breeder and a person trained in health based research, particularly nutrition, my knowledge base is simply growing. And whether or not I'm a guru or not, I, I certainly appreciate both the agricultural and the human health aspects of being. And what I enjoy is sharing that with people. And what attracts me now to being is beans were a staple food crop for centuries, for millennia. And we've lost our way in the past 50, 60 years and allowed the consumption of important staple food crops like bean to be replaced by what are referred to as ultra processed foods. And it is time, if we care about human health and the health of the planet, that bean returns to its rightful position as a staple food. So we have a food deficiency. And, that sounds quacky, but the reality of it is, from my perspective, there is truly a deficiency in the consumption of this category of food. And in the 21st century, in developed countries, be able to identify that kind of a problem and try to figure out how to overcome that problem, that is just a remarkable challenge and opportunity that I cannot resist, and I hope to continue pursuing for as long as I'm on this planet.
Well, I think I can speak for a lot of people when we say we love your passion, and you're actually one of the main reasons that I landed in Bean World, because I heard you present and I was like, this is it. So that's fun to hear that Mark Brick played a role in that story for you, and then passing it right along.
Yes, indeed. Pass it forward.
Exactly. And you spoke about kind of how we've sort of lost our way. And I know I've heard you refer to beans as kind of the secret of the ancients. So do you want to explain sort of what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. If we go back, we're going in our time machine, we're back about 10,000 years. And humankind at that point started to figure out that rather than being hunter-gatherers, that there might be some value to staying in one place and growing food. So we call that the period of domestication. And what is remarkable is independently, there were at least 7 regions around the world that established an agricultural system to provide food to their population. Small villages, and in all 7 domestication centers, being along with a source of starch, whether it be a cereal grain or a tuber like potato, were chosen as the complementation that would provide food security, our current terminology, for their living group. Always a pairing of a legume, particularly in most cases a cereal legume, a grain legume, sometimes an oilseed legume, but with basically a cereal grain. I don't think that's chance. And for the 10,000 years after that, pretty much until the 19th, 20th century in particular, that was how civilization thrived. And we've lost that. And as I mentioned earlier, what I'm really just fascinated by is the prominence of ultra-processed foods providing 50 to 70% of dietary calories, and with almost the complete absence on many meal plates around this country, but also the world, the absence of what had heretofore been a staple food. And a staple food, what that means is eaten in large amounts, multiple times a day, is a source of calories and proteins that is affordable and accessible. And we gave it up for ultra-processed foods. Not a very smart choice. That's why it's the wisdom of the ancients rediscovered.
Coming back to the bean, I think that's very important. And your research suggests that. So I was hoping maybe you could provide a little bit of background or a couple of the research projects that you've worked on over the years, maybe some of the highlights. I know there's a lot there, but a couple that you might want to share with us.
I guess one thing that to mention is when you look at the scientific circles in the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of enthusiasm for the value of food relative to the prevention of what are referred to as chronic diseases. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer are examples. They account for 70% of global mortality. So, very important diseases to try to prevent and control. Um, in the 80s and 90s, that interest began to wane because of concerns about the stability of people's eating patterns relative to the availability of very effective medications. We're now seeing is a reappreciation of the value of food. Why is that? I think that's the key question. Because of developments over the past 10 years, um, we can now recognize probably the nexus of interaction between food, move my hand here, and health is what is referred to as the gut microbiome. So all of the little microbes that are very important to our health and well-being that exist in our intestinal tract. The microbes exist almost all over the body, we're discovering in ways which were never appreciated. But let's just focus on the intestinal tract. And what and others have been studying is the profound changes in the nature of the microbes that are present in the whole length of the gut when when a diet that a person consumes either contains beans or is absent of beans. Because one of the many desirable attributes of beans are they're a excellent source not only of dietary protein, which is what is usually thought about, but they're also an excellent source of a diverse array of different types of dietary fiber. There's what's called insoluble and soluble, and then the little guys that are called oligosaccharides. And many efforts to provide fiber do not do it in a way that provides a diverse array of different chemicals, which beans naturally provide. One, we've studied this in the laboratory, in laboratory animals, and now we're moving this work with collaboration into people. We're discovering that the consumption of pulses, if in sufficient amounts, re-landscape, change completely. They do a makeover. Think of all your cool, the what I call it, reality TV shows that show all these, makeover the house, the makeover the yard. Well, when you eat beans and other pulses, you make over the nature of what goes on in your intestinal tract, and that appears to health benefit. My early work was on cancer, and I thought there were direct effects of beans on cancer. Perhaps there are. But now I'm very interested in how those effects may be mediated by the gut microbiome. Similarly, a major driver of the development of cancer is obesity. We've been publishing, consistent with the work of others, that bean has a true anti-obesogenic effect. What's that mean? That means that it helps you not gain excess weight. Now, if you overeat enough or get so physically inactive, nothing will protect you from obesity. But under normal circumstances, it gives you extra power, if you will, not to become obese. And new data that's emerging from our work suggests that it also can help individuals lose weight if they are overweight. So they would be real wins. So obesity is something that we've been very interested in. Cancer, the clinical work we're beginning with Dr. Hisham Hassan at the University of California, Davis, is on colon cancer. And it is just so profoundly logical to look very closely at the risk for colon cancer, particularly that's associated with obesity, and to determine specifically how much being is required for protection, and ultimately to understand how protection occurs so that um, it can be coupled with clinical approaches that are drug dependent to enhance the activity. We shouldn't say, oh, it's got to be either food or drugs. That's called the tyranny of the or. I think we're in the 21st century in the era of precision medicine and precision nutrition. We need to be enamored with the concept of the genius of the and, meaning, look, it's not food or drugs. It's food and drugs. If you use them and understand how they work collectively, that is how humankind will get the most benefit from contemporary medical approaches paired with good lifestyle, including the foods that we eat. That's a summary of 20 years worth of work as best as I can in 5 minutes.
It was brilliant, and there's so much to unpack there. I mean, one thing is clearly we have a new reality TV show on our hands, the re-landscaping, and the bean will be the hero.
You go in there and you look through the microscope and you say, oh my goodness, that ugly house has been rebuilt.
See, I can see it now. I don't normally watch reality TV, but I could get behind that. I'm trying to decide because there's so much there, but I know you've done work with breast cancer survivors, and I know you talked a little bit about that. Do you want to share just a little bit about the work you did with beans and breast cancer survivors?
Yeah. The women that we've worked with are wonderful. They're the real unsung heroes of all the work. And what... whenever you take a population, for example, the breast cancer survivors, and you do a dietary intervention, of which we've done in the survivor population 7, and it's funny because we're studying fruits, vegetables, legumes, and they always come down to, Henry, I hope this helps me lose weight. And I mean, invariably, and we invariably see weight loss. And we got focused on this whole thing with weight loss and what are the components of the diet that could really, truly, not hand waving, mean just like, oh yeah, sure, a good diet helps you maintain your healthy weight. No. Let's look for specific effects. And so that primed our interest. And I get passionate when I see people who are fighting for their lives be passionate in return. And when that work was going on, there was a lot of controversy about whether or not plant food had any impact on breast cancer. It was a very difficult period of time. Walter Willits Group, a leading nutritionist at Harvard, and he has this Nurses Health study. And one of the findings that caught my attention is that they found that the consumption of beans, lentils, two important pulses, were associated with a reduced risk for breast cancer. And I said, given my expertise, can we replicate those findings in a widely used and recognized animal model for breast cancer? And we have a long series of papers that show that bean consumption had a profound protective effect against the development of breast cancer. And then that work spiraled into, well, look, it has an anti-obesogenic effect too. Well, my goodness, there's a link between obesity and breast cancer. Maybe this isn't a coincidence. To the point that we've now taken and said, it's probably not a coincidence. And maybe it's due to all that re-landscaping reality TV that's going on in the gut. And then it's like, well, do something really logical, Thompson. Why don't you work with somebody who goes inside and looks in the colon and can actually see what's going on? Because that will have implications for returning the work to the breast cancer population. And yes, let's prove it here. You never prove anything. Let's show that it looks like this is really important for colon cancer, and that will promote more interest in breast cancer. Of course, in oncology today, there is a profound interest in what's called immuno-oncology, which is you take advantage of your own body's immune system to control cancer. And one of the what we think are hot, cool things is that we're actually experimenting, investigating is the right word, to establish how the effects of being on re-landscaping in the gut is actually talking to the immune system. And you got to know, two other cool things. We're developing evidence that suggests that bean consumption affects human performance. And I am also seriously looking at, given some of the chemicals produced in the gut in response to bean, we're hoping to extend our work to actually determine whether or not bean consumption has an impact on the development of Alzheimer's in an animal model for early onset Alzheimer's disease. In my judgment, one time that seemed a little far-fetched, and now I think that's low-hanging fruit that we should definitely look at. With an aging population, which, by the way, is more likely to consume more beans if you tell them it's good for their health. The aging population today is quite concerned about early onset Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's and dementia of any type. And in fact, if evidence can be found that shows that, as the Blue Zone diets would suggest, that that bean consumption is associated with longevity and human health and well-being. Chelsea, it's just kind of amazing that Mark Brick predicted that this is a magical food. I can remember him saying, it's almost a perfect food, Henry. I know you say there's no perfect food, but that was 20 years ago, and he wasn't too all of us, right? the world. We're all geniuses. We all have access to the internet, so we're profoundly information rich. So which further enrich your information source to include the consumption of beans as wise man's food.
All your research has developed, and I'm clearly going to have to send Mark a message after this saying thank you for being one of the reasons you're in Bean World. I'm looking forward to hearing about all those research results, and well, I guess I know the science is still developing. You'll be getting some great results from these upcoming experiments or the clinical trial and everything, but where the science currently stands is, I know it can vary with individuals, but kind of a general recommendation of what we're seeing and more to come, but as of right now.
So let me give you an answer that I've never given before because of the way you asked the question. How about that?
I'm excited.
So I say, with the way you asked the question, I think, because there is a lot of uncertainty about what the right dose is, a lot of discussion, it varies by country. Since beans are probably per calorie edible portion the richest source of dietary fiber, or one of the richest sources. Always better to be careful the way one says that. To close your fiber gap so that you get to at least 28 grams of fiber per day, and it's routinized. In other words, you get it every day. Given how people say, oh, you eat your fruits and vegetables, Okay, well, the average servings of fruits and vegetables are 2 to 3. Hasn't moved for decades, really. Uh, look, 12 to 14 for a segment of the population on a high being to eliminate the fiber gap. I think that's your minimal dose. And then if you, so, and Henry, what would that be? For most, yeah, for most people, I say, I'm hearing 3 cups, 1.5 cups per week. And I say, I, I'd say minimally a half a cup a day. And that's, I got to tell you, folks, who's ever listening to it, that's trivial. If you look with that, I mean, anybody can do that. That's simple. Um, I'd really like to see it be a cup a day. That is actually the dietary guidance in Mexico. Kind of interesting to know. And in the United States, it's not the dietary guidance now, but I bet it will be. And I think the sweet spot from our preclinical work and what I know of the human response, I think a sweet spot's going to be a cup and a half per day. Now, you say, so help me think about what that means. Well, you go and you buy that 15-ounce can of beans at the store. That's about a cup and a half, give or take a little bit. And so I'd say, if you really want to make sure that you're a winner, um, winner chicken dinner, but this isn't chicken, this is bean dinner. I think that would be probably very good advice. Do you need to go higher than that? Generally speaking, a cup and a half of bean a day crushes for anybody the fiber gap. That's obliterates it because that's basically the recommended amount of fiber for most people. And then if you put on top of that whatever other fiber that a person's eating, um, again, you're ahead of the game. Oh, Henry, but is there too much fiber? Well, there are people like in the AARP cohort, which is the retirement cohort that's been studied. I believe it was 60, not 28, 60 grams of fiber per day. So older folks seem to be able to do that in men. So men did it. Ooh, wow. I think they had half the risk of dying from a heart attack of people who didn't have that much fiber intake. I'm not saying where the fiber came from. I'm just saying fiber. And so it's like, well, you could probably easily tolerate 60. Certainly free living populations do that. And some of my colleagues who are gurus in fiber would say, well, Thompson, that's like wimpy because back in the old days, what is the old days? I don't know what the old days are. But back in the old days, people ate up to 80 grams of fiber per day, some even 100. Well, we don't think you need to do that, but certainly, crush the fiber gap, go beyond it, probably get more benefit. And I hope that the clinical trial and other work that begins to occur paints a clearer picture of dose, which is, for us all, we probably can be okay with what I just said when I interact with the docs, the clinicians. They want to get a recommendation that's sort of like a drug, which I get. I understand that. And so I think we need to sharpen our understanding of dose so that it will be more medically embraced. I can see beans being recommended, prescribed by your physician in a food pharmacy context. Food pharmacies are showing to promote healthy eating patterns, and it shows that a physician believes the food is important if they're willing to write a prescription that you take and fill at a food pharmacy. Many medical centers are beginning to have food pharmacy on premises, so it tells you a direction for the future. It's a little early for us to go there, but I really do believe that is the future, and we can all benefit from getting ahead of the curve. We don't have to wait.
Yeah, well, and all the benefits you're talking about, the healthy weight promotion, gut re-landscaping, you've talked about it could promote better exercise performance, potentially Alzheimer's prevention, longevity. There's just so much there and so much encouraging research happening. So we really appreciate you sharing your perspective on that. And you're also a bean fan. You don't just research them, you also eat them. So I have
Love
to
to eat them.
ask, yes, same, right? They're the best. They're,
They're the best.
I know you said they're almost perfect, or Mark Brick said almost perfect, but I think we can make an argument for that they're pretty perfect. So
Yeah.
what is one of your favorite go-to bean dishes or bean recipes?
Well, I mean, I cook in the kitchen and I'm creative. And so there's two versions of what's favorite. My wife is a good counterbalance to my creativity in the kitchen. And I think our family, my wife and I, and the dog, and the grandkids when they come over, and the kids, I'd say probably for the family, we have this recipe for, I think it's a 7 bean salad. And it's great. Make a huge pot of it. It's in the fridge, and you get hungry for a snack. You don't eat chips. You actually have a little of this, 7 bean salad. So now that's conservative, logical, and it's easy to eat a cup and a half of that salad a day. You can have it on your scrambled eggs for breakfast. It can go with, if you have bread at lunch, it can actually be the filler. I mean, it's a wonderful filler, and for dinner, it's your side salad. Um, but for me, I like to invent. So we've developed a way to take a whole cup and a half of beans, make a smoothie, and if I put olives in the smoothie, I drink it so fast I can't get it into the loaf of bread. But if I take my time to take the bean smoothie, so I like white bean smoothies in particular, and I am making a loaf of bread in my bread machine, I substitute the whole 1.5 cups or can of beans into the bread recipe, and now I have bean bread, which I can have with my bean smoothie, which I actually will warm up because bean smoothies just do everything. It can be a soup, so it's my bean soup. And if it's olive, and you want to taste something cool, it's olive flavored bean soup with homemade hot fresh bean bread. And if you really want to go and you have a bean milkshake that's vanilla flavored, woo! There's the ancients working hard in our 21st century kitchen. So I'd say, if for me, I love bread, so I love bean bread, and it makes a wonderful loaf of bread. And I love smoothies because it allows me, depending on my mood, to eat it cold, hot, or any place in between.
I love that. Yeah, a smoothie, it can be a puree, right? You don't have to have it as this cold beverage. It's really versatile, like you
Yeah,
talked
it's
about.
a
And
puree. Yeah, that's another name for
yeah,
it. Yeah, everybody that I'm talking to right now said, "Tell me more about the smoothie." The smoothie's a trick. It's just to put the bean into a form that you can use. Beans and other pulses should be everywhere in everything, and they're not. And so, how can you easily, for a person at home, make it so they can be in everything, in homemade stuff, easy to prepare stuff? The smoothie or the puree is the vehicle. And what I say to anybody that's listening, get creative. It's just so easy to personally consume a cup and a half per day. I mean, it's just not a challenge. My clinical colleague, who's from Turkey, where pulse consumption is common, he said, "Phew, you only want them to eat a cup and a half of pulses per day for the clinical intervention?" He said, "Oh, I think we could easily get them to eat a can at every meal." Well, I said, "Dr. Husan, I think that's a little bit optimistic. Let's not go there." So we're at a cup and a half a day. But, once you start to use these things and put them in everything, you can realize that there is just, it's only a lack of imagination that limits your ability to consume a lot of this delicious, almost perfect food as part of your daily routine.
yeah. I think that's a good point because you really can do anything with beans and other pulses. Just kind of start experimenting and having fun, and you can draw upon other cuisines, global cuisines, enjoy different flavors. And so you gave some great tips already. But if somebody came and they said, okay, I really want to start eating, let's go with, a can's worth or a cup and a half worth of cooked beans a day, if you're going to give me just one kind of recipe to start, is there one particular one that you'd recommend that people start with? Would it be kind of the olive puree? Would it be a sweet smoothie? Like, what would be your one, okay, here's a great place to start type of recommendation?
I would probably start with, say, okay, take the canned puree. Um, Now, do you like? Tell me a little bit more about um your taste. So you pretty quickly find out if they like sweet or savory. And then, so if they say savory, say, okay. So the easy thing to do is make up that cup and a half of stuff, and you have it made, and you have it in the fridge. And when you're in the mood, you just go to the fridge, decant it into a little glass. And if it's sweet, you probably want it cold. If it's savory, you may want it warm. And a lot of people might say, I like things at room temperature. So you've got that flexibility, and and you can experiment. So, I would try to inspire the creative. We all have a creative spirit within, and it's simply empowering a person to be creative, and to make the medium, this puree, match their mood. And food's about mood and about collegiality, and foods go with our moods in the day, and that thing in the fridge where you can just do whatever you want to it when you want to. I I think that's a pretty good way to do it, and it's not the traditional way to talk about it. Um, because I think traditionally you'd say, "Oh, you're trying to think of how to use whole beans." And I will tell many folks, I think, for the 21st century, it's time to get the beans out of the can. It Because they're in a can, it's sort of like you get this can mentality, and you don't think beyond the can about all the uses. And we need to break that. I can see into the future that these bean purees come in a little plastic pouch. Look how many things we have in little plastic pouches, and that it's you buy the pouch, and then it's just like you squeeze it into this recipe or that recipe or into your bowl for soup. It just changes your whole sense of what you're doing with these pulses. So I got
That's
so close to myself because my camera doesn't, I'm using my hands too much, and my camera doesn't know what to do with it.
no, it's good. It's showing your excitement. We love the zoom in. Any other last comment before I sign us off?
Yes. What I tell all the students in my classes when I give them something challenging: remember, it's easy, and I like it.
Exactly. Framing it the right way. So eating
Yes.
beans is
It's
easy.
easy,
You
and
like
I
it.
like it.
That's wonderful. And go
Or
ahead
the
and
other one, it should be like brushing your teeth. You shouldn't even have to think about it. That's how we should be, one in spirit with beans. Let's be one in spirit with beans. So it's a routinized lifestyle.
That's a perfect ending. So, on that note, really appreciate you sharing your expertise. I always learn something new when I talk to you, even though we've spoken for years regularly.
Yeah.
There's always something new. You're such a good speaker. You're so much fun to talk to, and your passion really comes through. So, thanks for inspiring us all to eat more beans.
You're welcome. Thanks for
Thank
having me interview with you, and have a great day.